Subscribe to my YouTube channel, share it with your friends, and comment your thoughts. The room was buzzing with laughter, clinking glasses, and the soft hum of orchestral music. A grand ballroom, draped in white silk and gold, was adorned with elegant floral arrangements. It was the wedding of the year, the one everyone had been waiting for. The groom, Alexander Beaumont, was the heir to a billion-dollar empire. His bride, Isabel Hawthorne, was as stunning as the event itself, a vision in a diamond-studded gown that shimmered under the chandeliers like the stars themselves. But amidst all the luxury, something strange happened, a ripple in the perfect, controlled image. She appeared at the entrance, a woman dressed simply in a faded navy dress and worn heels. Her appearance was so out of place that the room seemed to stop for a moment. The guests, who had been busy whispering to one another, paused mid-conversation, their eyes drawn to the unfamiliar woman. She wasn't like the others, she didn't fit in with the polished guests or the celebrities scattered around the ballroom. Security, standing by the grand doors, moved quickly toward her. A few guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats, and a hushed murmur spread across the room. No one knew who she was, and no one cared to ask. After all, weddings like these were for the rich, the famous, people who mattered. So, when she didn't budge at the guard's request to leave, the tension in the air thickened. "She needs to go," one of the wedding planners said, her voice tight. She had never seen anything like this before. A stranger, at a billionaire's wedding? It was scandalous, a disruption that could taint the entire event. But the woman simply stood there, her back straight, her gaze unwavering. She didn't seem worried about the uncomfortable looks from the guests or the approaching security guards. She had no intention of leaving, not yet, not until she had something to say. As the guards reached her, she made no move to resist. Her eyes, however, were locked onto the bride's face, a piercing look that sent a shiver down Isabel's spine. Isabel was standing by the main table, smiling, playing her role as the perfect bride, but as soon as her gaze met the woman's, her smile faltered. There was something familiar about her, something in the eyes that tugged at Isabel's memory. Before anyone could make sense of it, the woman spoke, her voice quiet, but clear enough for the entire room to hear. "I'm not here to cause trouble," she said. "But you need to know who I am. I'm your sister." The words hit the room like a thunderclap. Everyone in the ballroom froze, stunned into silence. No one moved, no one breathed. The word "sister" echoed through Isabel's mind, but it didn't make sense. Isabel had no sister. At least, that's what she thought. The woman's eyes were still locked onto Isabel's, and for a brief moment, the air seemed to thicken with something unspoken, something powerful that drew Isabel's attention like a magnet. It was as if the entire room had disappeared, and it was just the two of them standing on the edge of a precipice, about to plunge into the unknown. "Get her out of here," someone shouted, snapping the room back to reality. But the guards hesitated, unsure of how to handle this strange, cryptic situation. Isabel's heart pounded in her chest. Her thoughts raced, her mind scrambling to understand what was happening. A sister? How could that be? She had no memory of a sister, no memory of anything that could explain this woman standing before her. The guards, now more insistent, began to gently pull the woman away. But she didn't go easily. Instead, she turned to face Isabel once more, her expression serious. "You know who I am. Don't pretend you don't." The room remained in a tense silence as the woman was escorted out, her gaze never leaving Isabel's. And as the door closed behind her, the guests slowly returned to their conversations, their curiosity piqued but their focus now diverted back to the luxury of the wedding. But Isabel stood there, her hands trembling at her sides, still staring at the spot where the woman had stood just moments before. "Isabel," a voice called, and she turned, startled. It was her best friend, Sophie, looking at her with concern. "Are you okay? You look pale." Isabel nodded, but her mind was a blur. A sister? How was that possible? She had no memory of any sister. She had been an only child, or at least, she had always believed that. But the woman's words felt like a seed planted deep in her mind, growing roots and spreading, forcing Isabel to question everything she thought she knew about her past. As the night wore on, the wedding carried on as planned, elegant speeches, graceful dances, champagne toasts. But Isabel couldn't shake the feeling of unease. The woman's words had taken root in her mind, and they refused to be forgotten. Why had she shown up? And why had she been so certain of who she was? Isabel glanced at the guests, her eyes darting from face to face, but all she saw were unfamiliar expressions. The reality of the evening felt distant now, like she was no longer part of it. But then, something unexpected happened. In the middle of the ballroom, a well-dressed man approached her, his face calm but his eyes hiding a strange urgency. "Miss Hawthorne," he said, "there's something you need to see." The next morning, Isabel couldn't shake the haunting image of the woman's face from her mind. The echoes of her words, "I'm your sister," replayed over and over in her head. The photograph she had seen on the phone earlier only deepened the confusion. The name on the picture, the missing heiress, believed to be dead for 20 years, made her heart race. Could this woman really be who she said she was? And if so, why had she disappeared all those years ago? The opulence of the wedding, the laughter and music, now seemed distant, fading into the background of Isabel's mind. She walked through the grand mansion, her mind spinning. Every corner, every perfectly placed piece of furniture, every ornament on the walls seemed to close in on her. The perfect life she had carefully constructed for herself, the life that had been full of luxury and security, was now riddled with doubt. How could everything feel so off balance? Isabel stood in front of the large bay windows of her family estate, gazing out at the expansive gardens below. The soft hum of the morning breeze was the only sound, but inside her, everything was chaotic. Her phone buzzed in her hand, snapping her from her thoughts. Sophie had sent a message, "Call me. I'm at the office, but you need to know something." Her pulse quickened. Sophie had been her best friend for years, and her connection to the wedding was as strong as Isabel's. She trusted Sophie, more than anyone else. If Sophie was reaching out to her, then something was wrong. Isabel dialed the number, the phone ringing in her ear. After a few moments, Sophie answered, her voice strained and urgent. "Isabel, listen carefully. The woman from last night, the one who claimed to be your sister, I've been digging into her. You need to hear this." Sophie's voice wavered with a mix of excitement and fear. "Her name is Caroline. Caroline Hawthorne. Your half-sister." Isabel's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean? How is that possible? I don't have a half-sister." Sophie continued, "I know it sounds unbelievable, but I'm telling you. Caroline was believed to have died in a car accident when she was just a child. Her body was never recovered, but the police ruled it an accident. Her disappearance has been one of the biggest mysteries in our family history." A chill ran down Isabel's spine. "What do you mean, one of the biggest mysteries? And why didn't anyone ever tell me about her?" Sophie paused before answering, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Because your father, he's been hiding something. There's more to the story. Much more. And Isabel, this is bigger than we ever imagined. Your family's wealth, it's all tied to this. The real question is, why did she come back? Why now?" Isabel didn't know what to think. Her entire world was shifting beneath her feet, and she had no idea how to find solid ground. Sophie's words left a deep mark on her. She needed to know more. There were answers out there, but they were hidden beneath layers of secrets, lies, and years of carefully cultivated myths. Later that day, Isabel stood in front of the family's old estate records in the library, the heavy leather-bound books resting in front of her like ghosts from the past. The old tomes were filled with meticulously recorded family history, wealth, land acquisitions, and business dealings. But as she flipped through the pages, Isabel's hands began to tremble. She found something she hadn't expected, a document detailing her father's legal battles over the years, one of which included a settlement involving the mysterious disappearance of Caroline Hawthorne. The pages were yellowed, the ink faded, but the name Caroline stood out clearly. Isabel's breath caught in her throat as she read the details of the settlement. According to the document, her father had been involved in a long and complicated legal fight with another wealthy family, the Montagues, over the inheritance of a vast fortune. Caroline's disappearance had been the catalyst for the dispute, and in the settlement, her father had agreed to a substantial payout to keep the family from digging further into Caroline's fate. Isabel felt the walls of the mansion closing in around her as she processed the implications. Caroline wasn't just missing, she had been erased from the family's history. And Isabel's father had been involved in something much darker than she had ever realized. Suddenly, the door to the library creaked open, and Isabel's father, Richard Hawthorne, entered the room. His gaze immediately fixed on the book in Isabel's hands. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his voice tight. He was a tall, imposing figure, always impeccably dressed in a tailored suit. But there was something in his eyes now, a flicker of something unreadable. Fear? Guilt? It was hard to say. Isabel didn't flinch. She held the papers up for him to see, her voice steady but filled with fury. "Why did you keep this from me? Why didn't you ever tell me about Caroline? About the Montagues? What happened to her?" Richard's face hardened. He stepped forward, his eyes scanning the pages before he grabbed the document from her hands and slammed it onto the table. "You don't know what you're talking about," he said, his tone cold. "Stay out of it, Isabel. It's too dangerous." Dangerous? Isabel's heart raced. "Why didn't you just tell me the truth? All these years, I've been living a lie. And now Caroline's back, and you're acting like it's nothing. Why does it matter so much to you?" Her father's face flushed with anger, but beneath the rage, Isabel saw something else. A flicker of fear, a vulnerability he had never shown before. "You don't understand," Richard said, his voice low. "There are things about our family, about Caroline, that you don't need to know. Trust me, Isabel, it's better for everyone if you let this go." But Isabel refused to let go. She wasn't going to walk away this time. She was too far into this web of lies to back out now. "I can't let this go," she said firmly. "I need to know the truth. And I'll find it, no matter what it takes." As she turned to leave, Richard's voice stopped her. "Don't say I didn't warn you." Isabel walked out of the room, the weight of her father's warning heavy on her shoulders. She knew he was hiding something. He was hiding everything. But what was so dangerous about the truth? She needed answers, and the only place she could find them was in Caroline's story, the story of the missing heiress, the sister Isabel never knew she had. And if she had to tear apart her family to get those answers, she would. The days following Isabel's discovery were shrouded in a cloud of confusion and anger. Her world, once rooted firmly in the stone pillars of family tradition and wealth, had begun to crumble. The more she uncovered, the more layers she peeled back, the darker the secrets of her family seemed to grow. Her father's warnings echoed in her mind, but there was no going back now. She had come too far, and there was no turning around. Isabel spent her nights in the library, sifting through old family records and legal documents, trying to piece together the puzzle of Caroline's disappearance. The more she read, the more she understood. Caroline had been hidden away, not just to protect the family's name, but to conceal the dark, dangerous truths that had shaped their wealth and legacy. The Montagues. The name had been mentioned in passing so many times, but Isabel had never paid much attention. They were an old money family, just as wealthy and powerful as the Hawthornes, but their dealings were more clandestine. Now, with Caroline's name tied to their fortune, Isabel realized how much her father had sacrificed to keep the family's darkest secrets hidden. The Montagues weren't just enemies, they were connected to the very foundation of the Hawthorne legacy. With each document she uncovered, Isabel's mind raced with the implications. Caroline had been caught in the crossfire of a financial and personal war that neither she nor her father had been able to control. But what happened to her after that? Had she been left to die, or had someone orchestrated her disappearance for a much more sinister reason? Determined to find out, Isabel reached out to a private investigator, someone outside her family's influence, someone who might be able to dig deeper into the mystery. The investigator, a grizzled man named Ethan, had a reputation for solving cold cases. He had worked on cases involving missing people, unsolved disappearances, and corruption. His no-nonsense attitude was just what Isabel needed. They met in a small, dimly lit cafe in the heart of the city, away from the prying eyes of the Hawthorne mansion. Isabel felt the weight of her family's world pressing down on her, but as soon as she saw Ethan, she knew she had made the right decision. His sharp eyes scanned the room as he took a seat across from her, his face hidden behind the shadow of his wide-brimmed hat. "You're not here because of curiosity," Ethan said, his voice low but deliberate. "You're here because you want the truth. And trust me, I can give it to you. But I need to know exactly what you're after." Isabel took a deep breath, her thoughts swirling. She had come to a breaking point. "I need to know what happened to my sister," she said. "Caroline Hawthorne. She was believed to have died in a car accident, but I've discovered that she's alive. And there's something my family's been hiding. I need to know what it is." Ethan's eyes softened for a moment, but only for a moment. He was all business. "All right. Let's start from the beginning. We'll take it slow, and we'll find out everything." The first step was to locate Caroline. Isabel knew that her sister had been living under an assumed name, but that didn't mean she was impossible to find. The records showed that Caroline had been in and out of several different cities over the years, but there was one particular place that seemed to hold significance, a small town on the outskirts of the Hawthorne family estate. It was a town that Isabel's father had always avoided, a place that had a reputation for being off the grid. Isabel's pulse quickened. Was it possible that Caroline had been hiding there all this time? They arrived in the town 2 days later. The small, quiet streets seemed to be frozen in time. Old brick buildings lined the sidewalks, their facades worn by years of neglect. Isabel's heart beat faster with every step they took, the weight of the unknown pressing down on her. This was it, the moment where everything could change. Ethan led her to a small cafe on the corner of a forgotten street. The windows were cracked, and the doorbell jingled as they stepped inside. It smelled of stale coffee and old wood, the kind of place that seemed to exist outside the boundaries of the modern world. The cafe's only patron, an elderly woman, glanced up from her knitting as they entered, her eyes narrowing suspiciously. Ethan approached the counter, and after a brief exchange with the woman, he turned to Isabel. "She remembers Caroline. But it's been years. The question is, why would Caroline have come here? What did she know?" The woman, whose name was Martha, sat them down at a table in the back of the cafe. Her hands shook as she poured them both cups of coffee. Isabel's nerves were on edge, but she couldn't shake the feeling that they were getting closer. She had to know the truth. "She came here about 5 years ago," Martha said, her voice crackling with age. "She wasn't the same girl who disappeared. She was older, quieter. But she had that look in her eyes, like she knew something important, something dangerous. She didn't say much, but when she left something behind." Martha reached into her pocket and pulled out a faded envelope. Isabel's breath caught in her throat. This was it, the piece of the puzzle she had been searching for. Martha handed the envelope to Isabel. It was sealed with a wax stamp, and there was no return address. Isabel carefully peeled it open, her hands trembling. Inside was a single sheet of paper, scrawled with handwriting that was unmistakably Caroline's. They know. I have to disappear again. The truth is more dangerous than I ever imagined. I'm sorry, Isabel, but you can't find me. The Montagues won't stop until they have everything. The letter sent a chill down Isabel's spine. Caroline had known something. She had been running from the Montagues. And now, Isabel realized, it wasn't just her family's legacy at risk, it was her life. As Isabel read the letter, she felt a presence behind her. Ethan's voice was low and steady. You're not just looking for answers, Isabel. You're running toward something much bigger. The Montagues are involved, and you're in their sights now. We need to move quickly. Isabel's heart raced. What do you mean? What are we up against? Ethan stood up and turned toward the door. We're up against the truth, Isabel. And the truth has a price. The air in the small cafe had grown thick with tension. Isabel's heart was pounding in her chest, and her pulse raced as she stared at the man standing in the doorway. He was tall, with sharp features, wearing a dark suit that seemed to swallow the light. His eyes locked onto hers, and in that moment, she knew, this was no ordinary man. He was dangerous. Isabel Hawthorne, he repeated, his voice a low, controlled growl that sent a shiver down her spine. It's time we talk. There's no more running. Ethan, who had been standing beside Isabel, moved swiftly, his hand brushing against his coat where a weapon might be hidden. Isabel could see that he was assessing the man with the same intensity. Whoever this was, they were not someone to be taken lightly. What do you want? Isabel asked, her voice steady, though her insides were twisted with fear. Who are you? The man smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. It was cold, predatory. The real question is, who are you? Or rather, what are you? You see, Miss Hawthorne, your family's secrets run much deeper than you realize. Ethan took a step forward, blocking Isabel from the man's direct line of sight. Get out of here, he said, his voice low but filled with authority. Now. The man didn't flinch. He didn't even seem to acknowledge Ethan's presence. Instead, he tilted his head slightly, eyes narrowing. You're with her, aren't you? He said, more to himself than to anyone else. The one who thinks she can dig up the past. Who the hell are you? Ethan repeated, his hand now resting lightly on the side of his jacket. The man's gaze flickered between them before finally responding. Name's Victor Montague. And I suggest you listen carefully, Isabel. Because what I have to say isn't something you can ignore. Isabel's stomach dropped. Montague. The name she had heard whispered in the shadows of her family's past. The same name tied to Caroline's disappearance, to the legal battles her father had fought in silence. The Montagues weren't just wealthy rivals. They were her family's nemesis, the force that had always lurked just outside the polished world of the Hawthorns. Victor's presence in the small cafe, his confident demeanor, and the chilling way he spoke confirmed one thing: this wasn't just some passing encounter. The Montagues had found her. Ethan's hand twitched again, but he remained still. Isabel could sense the gravity of the moment. What do you want from me? Isabel asked, her voice trembling only slightly. Victor chuckled softly, as if amused by her question. You still don't get it, do you? Your sister, Caroline, didn't just disappear. She ran, Isabel. She ran because she knew the truth about your family's fortune. And now, it's your turn to understand. If you're smart, you'll stop asking questions. Victor stepped closer, his shadow falling over Isabel. But if you're foolish enough to keep digging, then you'll find that the Montagues aren't the only ones you need to worry about. Isabel felt the weight of his words sink into her. Caroline had known something so dangerous that she had been forced to disappear. And now, that knowledge had become a weapon aimed at Isabel. What truth? Isabel managed to ask, though her throat had gone dry. What is it that Caroline knew? Victor's eyes gleamed with something dark and knowing. Your family isn't as innocent as you think. And neither are you. Before Isabel could respond, Victor took a step back and smiled. You'll find out soon enough. We'll be seeing each other again. With that, he turned and walked out of the cafe, leaving behind a silence so thick it felt suffocating. Isabel stood frozen for a moment, trying to comprehend what had just happened. The world she had spent her entire life building, the perfect image of wealth, family, and security, was crumbling around her, revealing a much darker and more complex truth. Ethan, who had remained watchful throughout the exchange, spoke first. We need to get out of here. Now. The drive back to the mansion was quiet, the tension between them thick. Isabel was lost in thought, trying to process everything she had just learned. Victor Montague. The name was heavy in her mind, like a storm cloud waiting to break. What had Caroline known? What secrets were her father and the Montagues hiding? And why had Caroline left the cryptic message for her? Ethan glanced at her from the driver's seat. You don't need to do this, Isabel. You don't need to get caught up in your family's mess. Whatever they've done, whatever lies they've built, none of it is your responsibility. Isabel shook her head, the words hardening in her chest. It is my responsibility. I can't just walk away from this. I need to know the truth. And if Caroline's message means anything, it's that the Montagues aren't the only threat we're facing. Ethan didn't argue. He had seen too many people get caught up in things they couldn't control, but he also understood the pull of family. The weight of blood. He knew Isabel wasn't going to back down. When they arrived at the mansion, the air was thick with anticipation. Isabel's mind was racing. She knew her father had answers, but he wasn't going to give them up easily. If she was going to get to the truth, she would have to force it out of him. The confrontation with her father was inevitable. Isabel had avoided him since their last encounter in the library, but now she was determined. She couldn't keep living in the shadow of lies, and she wasn't going to let her family's legacy bury her under its secrets any longer. Isabel entered her father's study without knocking. Richard Hawthorne looked up from his desk, his usual composed demeanor faltering for a brief moment when he saw his daughter standing there. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his voice cold and sharp. "I'm here to talk," Isabel said, her voice steady. "About Caroline." Her father's expression darkened instantly. "I told you, Isabel. I don't want to hear about her. She's gone, and there's nothing you can do to change that." Isabel walked closer, her gaze never leaving his. "You're lying. She's not gone, and I'm going to find out why. You owe me the truth." Richard's face hardened, and for a moment, Isabel saw a flicker of fear in his eyes. It was brief, but it was there. "You don't know what you're dealing with," Richard said, his voice low. "You think you're prepared to face this, but you're not. The Montagues will stop at nothing. You need to leave this alone." "I can't," Isabel said firmly. "Not when I know you're hiding the truth from me. Why did Caroline leave? What really happened all those years ago? And why are the Montagues involved?" Richard stood up from his desk, his fists clenched at his sides. "Because the truth, Isabel, is something you can't handle. You'll never understand what it took to keep our family safe. There are forces at play here that you can't even begin to comprehend." Isabel stood her ground. "I'm not leaving until you tell me what happened. I deserve to know." Richard's eyes flashed with something dangerous. "Then you'll regret it, Isabel. If you dig any deeper, you'll destroy everything we've worked for." "Everything?" Isabel didn't flinch. "Then I'll destroy it. Because the truth is more important than anything you've built." The weight of the truth had settled on Isabel like a crushing burden. The secrets, the lies, the carefully constructed family legacy, all of it now felt like a lie. Her father's cryptic warning echoed in her mind: the Montagues don't just want our money. They want control. And you, Isabel, are the key. Those words had haunted her since that fateful conversation in his study. The more she uncovered, the clearer it became. Caroline's disappearance wasn't just a family tragedy, it was the spark that had ignited a war between two powerful families. Isabel had spent her life sheltered from the undercurrents of corruption, lies, and violence that had shaped the world of wealth and power around her. But now, she was right in the heart of it, and there was no turning back. Isabel sat at her father's desk late into the night, her mind racing. She had pieces of the puzzle, but they didn't fit. There was still something missing, something crucial that would explain everything. Caroline's disappearance, the Montagues' involvement, her father's insistence on keeping the past buried, all of it pointed to one inevitable conclusion: someone had to pay the price for the years of deception. The mansion, once a place of comfort and familiarity, now felt cold and unwelcoming. The walls seemed to close in on her, and every shadow in the corners of the room reminded her that her family's dark past was closing in. Isabel wasn't sure if she was ready to face what lay ahead, but she knew one thing for certain: she had to confront the truth, no matter the cost. The phone call came just after midnight. Isabel's heart skipped a beat when she saw the name on the screen. It was Ethan, the investigator who had helped her dig deeper into the mystery surrounding Caroline and the Montagues. They hadn't spoken in days, and she had a sinking feeling that this call would change everything. "Isabel, we need to talk," Ethan's voice crackled through the phone. "I've found something. Something big." She sat up straight, her fingers gripping the phone tightly. "What is it? What have you found?" "I'm sending you the details now," Ethan said, his voice tense. "But we need to meet in person. I'll be at the old warehouse by the docks in an hour. You need to come alone." "Alone?" Isabel's mind raced. "Ethan, what's going on? What did you find?" "There's no time to explain over the phone," he replied quickly. "Just get here. And don't bring anyone with you." The line went dead before Isabel could respond. She stood up from the desk, her heart pounding in her chest. She had come too far to turn back now. She had to know the truth, no matter what it cost. The docks were eerily quiet when Isabel arrived. The air was thick with mist, and the sound of water lapping against the pier was the only noise in the otherwise silent night. As she walked towards the old warehouse, she could feel the weight of her decision pressing down on her. She had no idea what Ethan had uncovered, but she knew it was something important. The warehouse was dark, its windows covered in grime, and the door was slightly ajar. Isabel hesitated for a moment before stepping inside, her footsteps echoing in the empty space. The smell of saltwater and rust filled the air, and her eyes struggled to adjust to the darkness. "Ethan?" Isabel called, her voice trembling slightly. A figure stepped out of the shadows, and Isabel's heart skipped a beat. It wasn't Ethan. The man in front of her was tall, his face partially obscured by a hood, but his presence was unmistakable. It was Victor Montague. "Isabel," Victor's voice was calm, too calm. "I knew you'd come. I've been waiting for you." Isabel froze, her heart racing in her chest. She should have known. The Montagues had been one step ahead of her from the beginning, and now she was trapped. "What do you want from me?" she demanded, her voice steady despite the fear gripping her. Victor took a step closer, his eyes glinting with something cold and calculating. "It's not what I want, Isabel. It's what you need. You've uncovered too much already. Your curiosity will be your undoing." Isabel's mind raced. She had to get out of there. She had to warn Ethan. But she couldn't show fear. She couldn't let him see her weakness. "Where's Ethan?" she asked, trying to keep her voice level. Victor's smile was sharp. "He's not coming. You won't see him again." A surge of panic coursed through Isabel, but she forced it down. She couldn't let Victor know that she was rattled. She had to keep him talking. "What do you want from me?" she repeated, her voice hardening. Victor took a step closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "What I want is simple, Isabel. I want you to understand that your family's legacy comes with a price. Your father's empire, the wealth, the power, it was all built on something far darker than you realize. And now, you're the one who has to pay that price." Isabel felt her stomach drop. "What are you talking about? My father built this family's wealth through hard work. You can't just—" "I'm talking about the truth, Isabel," Victor interrupted, his voice cold. "Your father made a deal. A deal with my family. And your sister, Caroline, she knew about it. She knew everything. But she wasn't supposed to survive. She was supposed to die, just like the rest of us." Victor's words hung in the air like a death sentence. Isabel's mind reeled. The truth about Caroline, about her family's wealth, it was far more than she had ever imagined. Victor stepped forward, his eyes locking onto hers with unnerving intensity. "Caroline found out about the deal your father made with the Montagues. And she wasn't the only one. Your entire family's fortune, Isabel, it was built on stolen land, on blood money. And when Caroline threatened to expose it, we had no choice but to make her disappear. She knew too much. She was a liability." Isabel took a step back, her mind spinning. "You're lying," she whispered, but her voice shook. She didn't want to believe it. She couldn't. "This isn't true. My father would never." "You don't understand, do you?" Victor continued, his voice low and dangerous. "Your father sold his soul to gain the power and wealth that he has. And now, you're the one who's going to pay the price for his sins." Victor reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small, folded envelope. He held it out to Isabel, his eyes never leaving hers. "This is the final piece, Isabel. It's the truth about everything. Your father's deal. Your family's legacy. Caroline's disappearance. You can't run from it anymore." Isabel hesitated for a moment, but then she took the envelope from his hand. She opened it slowly, the paper inside crinkling as she unfolded it. Inside was a single photograph, a photograph of Caroline, alive, but standing in front of a mansion she didn't recognize. Behind her was a man, his face blurred out, but Isabel knew, somehow, that this man held the key to everything. "Who is this?" Isabel asked, her voice shaking. "Who's the man in the photo?" Victor smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. It was a smile of someone who knew that the end was near. "That man is the one who controls everything, Isabel. Your father's deal wasn't just with the Montagues. It was with someone far more dangerous. And now, it's time for you to face him." The warehouse was silent, save for the sound of Isabel's breath catching in her throat. Her mind raced as she stood frozen, the photograph still clenched in her hand. Ethan was standing at the entrance now, his face unreadable, a gun in his hand. The man she had trusted, the one who had helped her uncover the deepest secrets of her family, was now the one standing between her and the truth. "Ethan," Isabel's voice trembled as she looked at him, desperate for answers. "What's going on? Why are you doing this?" Ethan's eyes flickered, but his expression remained stoic. He didn't move, didn't speak for a moment. The tension in the room was thick, suffocating. Isabel felt as though she was suffocating with it, each second feeling like a lifetime. Finally, Ethan spoke. His voice was low, filled with a strange regret. "I didn't want it to end this way, Isabel. But the truth is, too dangerous. It's not something you can just walk away from." Isabel's heart pounded. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. She had trusted Ethan, believed him to be the one person she could rely on in all of this. And now, here he was, standing in front of her with a gun in his hand, his loyalty to her shattered. Dangerous? Isabel repeated, her voice rising with disbelief. You mean the truth about my family? About Caroline? This is why you've been helping me all along? To keep me from the truth? Ethan's eyes flashed, and for a split second, Isabel saw something in them, something that was almost like regret. You don't understand, Isabel. You've been digging into things that are better left buried. If you want to know what really happened, if you want to know the whole story, you'll have to pay the price. There's no going back. Isabel stood her ground, though her heart was racing with fear. She couldn't let him intimidate her. She couldn't let him manipulate her into walking away from the only chance she had to understand what had really happened to Caroline, to her family. Is this what Caroline knew? Is this why she had to disappear? Isabel asked, her voice shaking, but firm. Because of you? Because of your family? Ethan didn't answer right away. Instead, he took a step forward, his eyes locked on hers. His silence was more telling than any words could be. The truth was there, hidden behind those cold eyes. Isabel felt the ground shift beneath her as the weight of it all crashed into her. I didn't want this for you, Isabel, Ethan said softly, his voice almost apologetic. But you have to understand, there are forces at work here that go beyond anything you could imagine. Your father, the Montagues, they've all been part of something bigger, something dangerous. Caroline was caught in the crossfire. And now, you are, too. The word stung, and Isabel's mind was racing faster than she could process. She had suspected something all along, but now that the truth was being revealed, it felt like the world was crashing down around her. Her father, her family, the legacy she had always believed in, they were all part of something corrupt, something dark. You knew all this, didn't you? Isabel asked, her voice shaking with a mixture of anger and heartbreak. You've known from the start. And you didn't tell me? You let me walk into this trap? Ethan's eyes softened, and for the briefest moment, Isabel saw a flicker of the man she had once trusted. But then it was gone, replaced by the hard, cold eyes of someone who had made their peace with the dangerous game they were playing. I tried to stop you, he said quietly. I tried to keep you safe. But you were too determined, too willing to risk everything to uncover the truth. I didn't want to see you get hurt, Isabel. I'm already hurt, Ethan, she replied, her voice breaking. Everything I thought I knew, everything I thought I could trust, it's all a lie. My family, my father, they've been lying to me all along. They've been hiding the truth about Caroline, about everything. And now, you're trying to keep me in the dark again? Ethan didn't answer, but Isabel could see the conflict in his eyes. It was fleeting, but it was there. For a brief moment, she thought maybe, just maybe, there was still a chance to change things. But then the reality of the situation hit her. She was standing in the heart of a conspiracy. A conspiracy that involved her family, the Montagues, and the powerful figures who controlled everything. And Ethan. Ethan had been part of that conspiracy all along. Isabel took a step back, her heart pounding as the full weight of what she was about to do settled on her shoulders. I won't walk away from this, Ethan, she said, her voice steady. I won't let you or anyone else keep me from knowing the truth. With that, Isabel turned and started walking towards the door of the warehouse, determined to find the answers she had been searching for all this time. She had come too far to back down now. But before she could reach the door, a shot rang out. The sound was deafening in the confined space of the warehouse, and Isabel spun around in shock, her heart stopping in her chest. Ethan stood there, his gun still raised, but his expression was one of shock. I didn't mean to, he began, but his words were cut off by a sharp gasp. The bullet had missed Isabel by mere inches, grazing the wall beside her. She felt the heat of it, the rush of air as it whizzed past her head. She could see the fear in Ethan's eyes now, the same fear she felt in her own chest. Ethan. Isabel cried out, her voice filled with disbelief. What are you doing? Why are you trying to stop me? This is the truth I've been fighting for. Don't you understand? Ethan's hand shook as he lowered the gun, his face pale. I didn't mean to. I wanted to protect you, he whispered, his voice filled with regret. But you're right. You deserve to know the truth. You deserve to know everything. Isabel stood there, staring at him, her mind spinning. She had trusted him. She had believed in him. And now, it felt like everything was slipping through her fingers. You can still help me, Ethan, Isabel said, her voice trembling with emotion. You can still make this right. But you have to tell me everything. You have to tell me the truth about Caroline, about my father, about everything. For a moment, Ethan didn't speak. He just stood there, his eyes searching hers, as if he was trying to make a decision. Then, slowly, he lowered the gun and walked towards her, his face filled with a quiet determination. All right, he said softly. I'll tell you everything. But we have to leave now. There's no time to waste. The Montagues won't stop. They'll come for us. They'll come for you. Isabel felt a shiver run down her spine. The Montagues. They were the final piece of the puzzle. And now, she was more determined than ever to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. As she followed Ethan out of the warehouse and into the night, Isabel knew one thing for certain. This was just the beginning. The final battle was yet to come, and the truth was about to come to light in ways she could never have imagined. The end. Wait for next part.